Hi, so welcome to my workshop. And so this workshop today, we are going to be talking about how to sell your skills with Hays. So I'm just going to open up my PowerPoint. Thank you everybody for joining me today. And I will open that up. So today, we are going to run through how to sell your skills. Now, my name is Sarah Atkinson, and I work here at Hays, and I'm part of our talent acquisition team based out of our Preston office, actually, so not too far from yourselves in Lancaster. And we are working together with a lot of different universities and colleges across the UK and Ireland at the moment to deliver workshops such as these to help you when it comes to selling your skills, preparing for interviews, personal branding, everything like that. So if you do have any questions, we will have plenty of time at the end of this workshop today. So I want to run through how to identify your skills. How are you going to be able to include those on your CV? What kind of skills have you developed, whether it is through placements, work experience, part-time work, that kind of thing. I'm going to use some of our information that we've drawn from what we call our salary guide. So we're going to discuss the most in-demand skills according to employers here in the UK and Ireland. How are you then going to be able to write about your skills in your CV, in your cover letter, maybe in some of your LinkedIn posts? Think on your feet and come to people with solutions as opposed to going, I have no idea what I'm doing right now. Can you please help me? The ability to adopt change. So businesses are changing all the time, whether it's you've got AI that is coming into play, you've got home working, or there's any kinds of changes with legislation, for example. You have to be able to adapt to that change. There is a massive focus also on the ability to learn and upskill. So obviously yourselves, you're all studying at the moment, maybe you're doing a degree, maybe you're doing a master's. So that ability to continue to learn and upskill throughout your career is really important. You might want to take part in some CPD, there's maybe some training courses that are available. What's your appetite to continue to learn and make sure that you are pushing yourself with your skills there? Flexibility and adaptability. Things happen, as we've talked about, in terms of the ability to adopt change. So you need to be flexible and, make sure that you can kind of clear that diary and jump on board if the team needs you, for example. Can you come into the office an extra day that week, actually, because your manager is going to be in and it's going to be easier to have a meeting, for example. So those are the core soft skills. So when we're saying kind of soft skills, it's the kinds of things that not necessarily getting from like a degree or kind of technical training. It's what you've maybe developed in terms of part-time work, placements, experience in the industry, or trying to complete your coursework, delivering presentations, for example. You're definitely building up on your communication skills there. So these are the core skills I would say you need to be focusing on when you are completing your applications for roles this year. So, which skills are most valued? So this is very much so dependent on the kinds of roles that you are actually applying to at the moment. So, for example, you want to go into business management. So you're looking at like graduate management opportunities. I would say that the top skills that you're probably looking at there are problem solving, attention to detail, and communication. You need to be able to communicate with your internal colleagues. You're going to be sending out emails or potentially kind of documents to clients, for example. You need that attention to detail. Let's just make sure that this has had spell check, it makes sense, and you're communicating that point across correctly. You've also got teaching, for example. So you probably need critical thinking and problem solving when it comes to teaching. Maybe you want to go and work in sales. Brilliant. You're definitely going to need communication and the ability to build rapport. Another one that I would probably put on there would be resilience as well. When it comes to sales, it's not an easy job, and you might have a lot of kind of objections and no's, for example. So that ability to bounce back, remain positive is very important. So you need to kind of figure out what kind of career are you wanting? What kind of roles are you applying to? And what does that look like one time? So this information, you definitely have kind of like chartership websites. So CIPD is more specifically around kind of HR. You have ICE, so that's kind of chartership of engineering. There's loads and loads of different kinds of chartership websites. So you can find out what kind of career you're looking for and see, right, okay, do they have like a governing body or a network? Have they got an information page that's going to help me find out? There's loads of information on LinkedIn, so hopefully you've created a LinkedIn profile. Have a look at some of their blogs and articles. So you can actually sign up for notifications and they will send you through regular blogs every week, for example. It could be around finance, it could be around business. There's loads and loads of stuff coming through from LinkedIn. I would definitely argue having a look at job adverts. So the roles that you're actually applying to, they mention the skills. So they're the skills that they are looking for within your cover letter, within your CV. So make a note of the regular kind of skills that are popping up in those job adverts and how are they kind of phrasing it? You know, are they giving specific examples in terms of how you've used those skills or how you've developed those skills? So really, really great opportunity for you to apply that to your CV and your cover letter. So you might see that there's kind of quite long, lengthy job adverts, and sometimes they're quite snappy and they might be kind of bullet points and things. So sometimes it might take a little while longer to go through some of those job adverts to identify what's really important. Or you can speak to industry experts. So, for example, recruitment consultants like myself or kind of recruitment agencies, you know, they're going to specialize within that industry that you're wanting to get into. So they'll know about graduate opportunities. They'll know what their clients are looking for. You know, what are the top skills that they're seeing? So like that information that I've mentioned in terms of our salary guide. So start building that network, start speaking to agencies maybe, or people who work in organizations where you're wanting to actually join. You think they're going to be an excellent organization, try and tap into some of the people who work there already. See if you can get some advice in terms of the skills that they would be looking for if you were to join their team. It's not easy, definitely not when it comes to networking. Maybe see if there's some networking opportunities on campus, or some local kind of networking opportunities within the Lancaster area, for example, where you can start to kind of get your name out there and build some connections. So, how do you write about your skills? It's not easy writing a CV, and I completely get that. So, you've got your CV, and sometimes you've got organisations that are offering, asking for a cover letter. So, they might have a clear skills section. So, like what I have here displayed. So, try to look at that snapshot. And how do you kind of value yourself in that professional world? So, you need to add some depth. So you might have a skills section there, but you need to make sure that you then go in to add some more details. How have you kind of developed those skills? Does it relate back to your time working in hospitality, for example? What kind of industry knowledge have you gained? You know, is it maybe project management skills? Is it kind of HR skills? Full UK driving license, that's fine. You know, you don't necessarily need to expand on that one. But how are you organised and detailed? Have you developed this through project work or workshops, for example? Then throughout your CV, you really need to bring this to life. You know, facts and figures. If you were delivering a project, for example, and you had a really tight deadline, right, okay, so I needed to be organized and I needed to make sure that my presentation was very detailed. So I broke this down into separate deadlines. So let's say it was due in on the 1st of June, right, chunk it down. What do you need to do each week? So you can kind of talk about those timelines. Maybe you had a budget, for example, you were working with a client, you had like a consultancy piece of work that you were doing. Okay, how did you make sure that you stayed within that budget? What was the budget? Facts and figures, bring that experience to life when you're writing your CV. Try to make sure that the skills that you're talking about are transferable and applicable to the roles that you are discussing. So, like I said, make a list of what that job advert is actually looking for. Have you made sure that you mention each of those skills within your CV and covering letter? Quite often, clients, you know, the figure that we're kind of looking at the moment, sometimes they can take 10 seconds to have a look over a CV and a cover letter to decide if they're going to progress that CV or not. So you need to make it really clear, but you need to make sure if it's also going through a system that's kind of scanning your CV, if you've not mentioned keywords that they've fed into that system, it's going to be rejected. So make sure that you are including that when you read back over your CV and your cover letter. Make sure that it is very much so demonstratable, not that you've just kind of said, oh, I've got really good communication skills, and that's it. I don't know how you've developed those communication skills. So make it really clear, really succinct. Bullet points are your friend. They can break it up, definitely. And it doesn't need to be just one page for your CV. It can be 2 pages. If you've got loads of experience in terms of internships and placements and things, it can certainly be a lot more than that. But cover letter, yes, if you try to keep that to 1 page, certainly. So make sure, yes, covering off all of the different skills that are mentioned in the job advert. Make sure that you do have a quick kind of snapshot overview at the top of the page so that when a client is having a really quick skim read of your CV, they can identify that, yes, you're ticking that box in terms of mentioning everything. Facts and figures are your friends as well. And just make sure that you do spell check as well. So what kind of skills have you got already? So you might be saying, well, I'm a trainee, I've not done a position before, but you do have a lot of valuable and transferable skills, even if it's just from your time at university. And you need to make sure that this is included in your CV and cover letter. It shouldn't be just a really small CV because you don't think you've got much experience. You just need to elaborate, that's all. So it could be you've worked in hospitality while you've been studying. So you've definitely managed expectations. So it's really busy on a Saturday night and a family say, right, well, can you squeeze me in? Unfortunately, no, we can't, but we can in half an hour. We've got a table coming up. Would you like to go into our bar? Would you like to have a drink? And then we can pull you through to the table, for example. Conflict management, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when you're working in hospitality, definitely not. And you're building rapport with people as well, because there's an expectation that you want those people to come back to wherever you're working. Placement, building your professional brand. So you're starting to build your network on LinkedIn, for example. You've got corporate skills in terms of, your emailing, how you conduct yourself in a meeting, and that industry knowledge. You've taken what you've been doing at university and you have now applied it into a placement. Talk about that. Even when you're a student, you're definitely working towards deadlines. You are engaging with teams, you're engaging with people from different kinds of backgrounds. Lancaster University, they pride themselves on having people from all over the world who come over to do their studies. So you need to kind of think about that. How have you used that when you've been working with all of these different people? Long-term commitment. It might be that you've done your degree and now you're doing your master's. So you're very much so committed, you're kind of loyal to that aspect, you're very driven that this is what you want to achieve. Customer service, you might have worked in like a call center, for example. So you've managed relationships, you've definitely problem solved. If somebody calls in and there is something seriously wrong, you need to be able to kind of handle that situation. So de-escalate it potentially, and then come up with some kind of resolution that's within your power to deliver. Active listening as well. So as well as that kind of active listening, you need to be able to use that questioning technique as well. If somebody's got a problem, we need to get to the root. What is the problem? How do we identify that? So you've used your questioning skills and your active listening. Caring responsibilities, for example, you've definitely shown empathy there. You've taken ownership and taken responsibility for that, and you've got attention to detail. You're probably working to really strict time deadlines as well within the caring situation. So there's loads of different things and loads of different areas where you might have developed some of these skills. So make sure that you're identifying these and putting them in your CV and your cover letter. So make sure that you talk about them, set it out in terms of career history. So you need to do your most recent piece of work experience or placement, for example, and work backwards. You don't necessarily need to put the skills in bold to make them really stand out, but it just really helps with, as we said, that kind of facts and figures aspect that you have going on there. So how do we talk about these? Okay, so preparing for interviews, it's not fun. Okay, so you've had the stress of trying to write a CV, cover letter, maybe an application form, for example. Now you've actually got the interview. You're either going to meet somebody face to face or via Microsoft Teams. That's really nerve-wracking, and we completely get it. So make sure that you go back to that job advert. You might have it saved. You can ask the recruiter who's working with you. Right, can I please have a copy of that job advert again? I need to go back through. So the key things that you need to be looking at here are the skills, the company values, because these are the things that they're going to be asking about as you are going through the interview. So highlight them, or, pull them into a list, whichever's going to work better for you. And then what you need to start to do is prepare some answers in case you're asked about this. So, for example, tell me about a time where you have been resilient. Okay, right. We're going to write out an example of how I have been resilient in my work experience. Plan short answers. You don't necessarily need to go into masses and masses of depth. What I would recommend is that you would use the STAR technique. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the STAR technique at all. Anybody heard of the STAR technique? Anybody know what the STAR technique involves when it comes to interviews? No? I'm going to take the silence as a no. So the STAR technique, basically how it works is it is situation, task, action, result. Okay, STAR. Loads of information on our website. You can even just Google it and there's loads of information there. Indeed, and other agencies have put up articles about that. So when you are planning out your example, your answer, just write STAR down the side of the sheet. So what was the situation? So for example, if we are working in retail, okay, so there's a really busy Saturday and we were short staffed. So we were down 2 team members. Okay, so that's the situation. What was the task? Well, you had to make sure that you completed stock take, you were on the shop floor and you kept it clean, and you were also managing the tills. So that's the task. Action, what did you do? So you use your time management skills to ensure that somebody was on the tills while you were doing the stock take. You then took your time to clear up the shop floor, and then you also relieved that person from the tills. So that was the actions that I took. And then what was the result? It was a successful Saturday. We hit our targets. Customers were really happy. Stock take was done on time, and the store was still clean and tidy and presentable for everybody who was coming in there. I developed my time management skills during this situation, and I also developed more customer service skills in that time. So hopefully that helps you, writing down the values, writing down the STAR technique and the skills. Plan some examples, because this is the kind of detail and depth that clients and employers are looking for, essentially, because you need to really bring your CV to life when you're in an interview. You need to really sell what you've been doing, and you need to have that ability to be confident and persuade them. This is how I have developed these skills. I am really good with resilience, and here is why. And this is why you should bring me to the business. Sometimes you can also tailor it back. So, if they're asking you about resilience, well, for example, a sales job. Well, of course I need resilience coming into a sales job because you face objections, you face disappointment in sales. This is how I have developed my resilience skills. It's showing your understanding of the job that you've applied for and how those skills are going to be used in that job day to day. This is where the research piece is really, really important, because if you've gained a good understanding from doing that research, again, you're developing that skill in terms of, learning and upskilling. Are you capable of conducting research and picking things up on your own and then applying it and showing willing and that drive that this is something you are passionate about, that you want to go into? So make sure you do this preparation. Try and practice the STAR technique, even if you're just kind of in your room and you've got a couple of examples, you've got an interview tomorrow, right? Just try talking it through, because sometimes if it's literally just written down on a piece of paper, it can come across a little bit robotic, for example. So try talking through this, whether it's you get a friend to ask you some questions and you just kind of mimic it. You maybe get a little bit dressed up like you would for an interview, and you do a mock interview. Or you go to your careers team, for example, and just say, right, okay, I would like to arrange a mock interview. This is the kind of role that I'm applying for. And just go and develop your experience and opportunity there, and do a mock interview, because it can be really nerve-wracking. So if you've experienced a mock interview, I would argue that, it can put your mind at ease. It can kind of settle your nerves a little bit. There's loads of top tips and skills when it comes to doing an interview. So for example, having a glass of water, if you need to think about a question because you think it's particularly difficult, right, okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water, just to buy yourself a couple of minutes time, just to think about how you're going to go about answering that. You can also repeat the question back. So you can say, actually, yep, so XYZ, that's a really good question. Here is my example, to make sure that you've understood what they're asking you. So there's loads of different skills and top tips that you can follow there, but definitely the STAR technique, go through the job advert, have a look at the skills and the company values. How do those company values reflect in terms of yourself? Do you try to do the best thing by people? Are you people focused? Are you driven by customer service? Is sustainability something that is of interest? It's a massive focus for organizations at the moment. Right. Talk about those values because they're going to want to see you demonstrate those values through the interview. You need to be able to kind of come in and fit from a softer kind of personality aspect, as well as these skills that we're talking about today. So companies can definitely teach you technical skills, whether it's your placement, your part-time work, anything like that. So they can teach you all of the technical skills, but it's down to yourself in terms of how you develop your communication, maybe creativity skills. So demonstrate what you have to offer. So let's talk about your potential. Okay. So it's more than just those technical skills or those softer skills and knowledge that you've developed at university. So the most in-demand skills, as we saw in the slide previously, the top skill was actually communication and interpersonal skills. So how have you put yourself in scenarios where you have developed your communication and interpersonal skills? So everybody's going to talk about these skills. Everybody knows, let's have a look at the job advert. Let's mention these values. Let's mention these skills. How are you then going to take it to the next level when you're invited for an interview? So how do you bring this to life? Engage with the interviewer. Show that you have done your research into the business, not just Hays is in, 32 different countries. They've been around for over 50 years. Go on their LinkedIn page, maybe go on their social media pages. It's really exciting. Oh, I've seen that Hays has actually just opened a brand new office in Bangkok. That's really interesting. How is the Asian market going? Or, okay, so we have ABC company. I see that you've just won a new project. That's very exciting. What does that mean for the business? That kind of in-depth research, not just kind of reading the front page of a website, for example. So ask those questions. It also shows willing that you're interested in the job. Don't just ask about salary. Don't just ask about holidays and things. Questions around, what's going to be expected of me in the first 3 to 6 months. How can I be successful in this role? What are you typically looking for in a successful applicant? Have I answered all of your questions succinctly? Those kinds of questions. So be prepared to talk about more than just your degree and the skills. They're going to ask about what's really important to you. So this comes back to that values section that we were talking about. What's your hobbies? What are you doing in your spare time? What are you really passionate about? Do you like doing charity volunteering? Are you part of loads of different sports societies and you're absolutely sports mad and that's what you spend the majority of your time doing at the weekend? Be prepared to talk around this as well, because it is, internships or graduate opportunities, that kind of entry level position. They're going to want to know, what else are you doing around your studies? What makes you tick? What are you passionate about? So you need to be able to link that back. And you need to kind of talk about your essential or kind of desired skills within that industry. Again, this goes back to your research. Having a look at the kind of industry or network websites like CIPD, you've got ICE for engineers, for example. So go back to that research and demonstrate, right, well, from my research, this is what I found out, and this is why I think I'm right for this position, and tailor it back as best as you can. Make sure when you are talking about your potential, you're kind of talking about that longevity. So yes, it might be a graduate position for 1 to 2 years, for example, but maybe talk about where you want to go further down the line. Where do you see this career going? Are you wanting to get into people management? Do you want to gain chartership, for example, in a particular kind of industry body? Talk about that, because that shows that you are committed to this role, you're committed to the company, you're not just wanting a quick graduate role for a year and you're going to kind of disappear somewhere else. Companies look for that longevity. So be prepared, link it back to your research that you've done, and be willing to kind of talk about your extracurricular activities that you have been completing. Societies, as I mentioned, it could be sports, it could be that you do games, there's all sorts that you could be doing. You might be really into your fitness, for example, and you can pull skills from that when you kind of take time to sit down and identify, well, what am I actually doing when I'm at the gym? Well, I'm challenging myself. I'm being really good with my time management because I need to be able to carve some time out of my day to get away from my studies and then spend time on myself when I go to the gym. So there's loads and loads of different ways that you can write about this on your CV. So I feel like I've done a very quick whistle-stop tour of how to sell your skills with Hays. So I've got a QR code here that hopefully you can all see. And essentially what that is you can fill in a very short form and you can send through some information to ourselves if you would like to find out some more about the internships and graduate opportunities that we have available here at Hays. So I don't know if you want to you can take a picture of that and you can fill it in later, that's absolutely fine. But that comes through to us here at the talent acquisition team here at Hays. But what I'm going to do is I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions for me at all.